With self-titled, I remember that record because talking to the band, they were broken up, but they were going to go and do a record anyway. They had maybe 2 songs written when they went to the studio with Barry Pointer. I remember Barry Pointer calling me specifically from the studio saying he was going to send the guys home because they had nothing written.
Weirdly enough, that was probably one of the least stressful records I've ever done with Jesse, because we kind of both had some ideas for songs. I had a slew of things I wanted to do with different songs, and we just threw them together kind of in like 2 or 3 practices.
I always felt bad, like I was annoying him because I started wanting to sing and like try stuff, and I wasn't naturally like really good at it yet, not that I'm not good at it now, but I can do it, and I knew he wanted to, It would piss me off if, like, I was in a band with somebody like me, and like Scott's just shredding and Dan has all these, but there's always like, I always had valid ideas though, and I was like, come on, like, hear them, don't be mad because it's not yours or whatever, like, I was never into like, it started by that point to get into like a who does what thing, and I think a lot of that was created by me and Scott a little bit.
But then we get this demo in, or the mix in, and it's another profound Zao record. I mean, it was such a great record for them.
It was really cool, and I was stoked to do it, because the cool thing about it was it wasn't something that we wrote beforehand. It kind of all came together while we were doing the record.
I drove down there in my Jetta because I got in a car wreck while I was there.
Me and Jesse were the only 2 riding down, which was actually a cool ride down. Oddly enough, we wrote 5-Year Winter on the way down to the studio in the car, because we got caught in a traffic jam right at Charleston, and we were sitting there for like an hour and a half, and we didn't know what was going on.
We wrote that song on the dashboard.
He was like, I have the drum part, play it on the dashboard of the car.
He had these riffs, and I was like, well, maybe it should, do this, and I hummed the breakdown. I was like, what you go, like, jump down and then we'll use bottles, and yeah, that's totally how it was.
Like, all these songs were as new to us as they would be to the person that heard the record, instead of most bands where they write their songs and work on them for months and months and months and then get to do the record, and they're sick of the songs already, but they're recording it for the record. But for us, it was like they just kind of came to us already, and it was all new. So when we got the record done, it was like, man, these are like new songs. We haven't heard them yet. It's so cool. So it was a really exciting record for me.
That was a good time because it was like like the vision you have of bands in the studio, the different instruments and like the whole thing. We partied a lot, like Scott partied a lot. It was fun, It was cool. Yeah, that's a good point to make, because it was really fun, and it was just me and Scott.
But at the same time, when I look back, we took no time on it, and I'm, disappointed in all kinds of different things about that record. I still hate to this day the sound of the drums. I never was into doing that ridiculous V-drum fake sounding trash. I never liked it. But, just to not cause any kind of riffs, I just went with it, and then I got to do my guitar tones, so whatever. I wasn't going to say, don't do these drums this way. But yeah, I mean, that, to this day, if I could re-record that record with real drums, I would give anything to do that.
Dan came down for a couple days and just sang on it.
What Dan did, Dan flew down afterwards, and he was there for like 3 or 4 days to do his vocals.
By now I'm living on my own, struggling to pay my own bills, and Jesse calls me and says, hey, you want to make a little bit of money? We're going to do another album. I definitely was personally interested, and I always have, and to that point had been working on lyrics, not necessarily for Zao, but I always just kind of write a lot of stuff down, as far as that's how I deal with a lot of things, is just writing my thoughts out. Everyone wanted to do a good job on their part, but as far as like putting it together, it was very rushed and very thrown together, which is strange because people love it, and it's like it literally was like thrown together, like kind of like when you have to write a paper for school and you put it off, and the night before have to go to school the next day, you sit down and grab a bunch of encyclopedias and books from the library and stay up till 4 in the morning and crank out some paper. It's more or less how Self-Titled and Pray to Chaos were, like overnight homework assignments, kind of. There were songs like 5-Year Winter that we were like, oh, that's cool, it was put together real quick, and I heard that song. I'd like written a letter to a girl, and when I heard that song, it just made me like instantly think of the letter, and you know, weird little things like that, like little 5-minute decisions, not long pre-planned ideas, just little quick, you know, on the spot. That's pretty much what this band's always been like. Probably besides like Blood and Fire Liberate and Funeral of God, like everything between there was just like chaos.
That is the history of Zao. It's just constant turmoil, constant tragedy, constant strife, but for some reason they're able to make this incredible thing. They've always been able to make just incredible things out of all this tragedy, and that's to me what Zao's always been about. And it is Zao. I mean, the tragedy is Zao.
I had already started talking about like how like Self-Titled was the last Zao record, kind of unfairly to like Scott. I started running my mouth a little bit and being like, I'm not doing it. Zao's done.
Zao in Greek originally named as alive, spiritually alive, in essence kind of like third eye open, you know, realizing spirituality and not only realizing but being alive in it. And through that we were going to call it Alive is Dead. But at the same time, not necessarily influenced or known, the Juliana Theory had put out an album called Emotion is Dead. And we felt because of Brett's, you know, involvement in Zao earlier that they would think that, you know, we were just helpless and we were stealing his ideas to, you know, just being too close to being on the same label and having such a close name and having, you know, one of the members of the other bands had been in the other band. So Alive is Dead was my suggestion prior to even knowing about Emotion is Dead, because it more or less meant Zao is dead. Like this is our last album, Zao is dead.
It started to get really weird between me and Scott, because then it was like, he'll write all his songs, I'll write my little songs, we'll show them to each other and kind of do it. Self-Titled wasn't like that as much. We did it like that, but like, you know, then it started getting super separatist. Like, and me being like, I'm hurting him and he's hurting me, but like, I'm the only person that gets blamed for anything. And then Russ just being around here and there, and Dan coming and going, and I was just like, this is a fucking circus. And like, but like nobody in the band thought it was. And I was just like, look at these other bands. Like, this is not how bands work. Bands break up. And then I started being scared of like, oh, what if I don't do this anymore? I suck at playing guitar. I suck at singing. You know, I did some dumbass solo album that sold 5,000 copies and I never got paid for. I did that during that time, you know, horrible. You know, I was just like kind of like lost. I wasn't going to church, you know, just doing whatever, you know.
You know, Corey did vocals for a while, and I mean, I love Corey. I came back, like, you know, there was a period in there, and then when I came back, he played bass for a while, and I mean, me and Corey, as far as I know, have always been, you know, on really good terms, and I've always respected him and, you know, liked him. And then I was back in the band again, you know, because, you know, hey, like I was saying before about the album, you know, hey, here's some money, come record, then we're gonna play some shows. And then we'd record and play some shows, and then it'd be the same thing, like I'm being told about playing shows or leaving for 2 weeks, 2 or 3 days ahead of time, or I can't go play this show in 3 days, so I get, you know, yelled at, more or less, because I'm holding the band back. And not only did I feel it personally, I needed, you know, something more stable, but I felt that if these guys really want to do this, which I didn't have faith, not necessarily in the band, but there were certain members that I didn't necessarily have faith in that we're going to keep doing it, you know? So I'm torn. What am I supposed to do? So I felt, you know, like I said, this wasn't an overnight decision. This is like literally like sitting around and thinking for hours, thinking about the pros and the cons and this person and myself. And, you know, I come to a decision, well, I'll back down, you know, because there's people willing to take the chance, and I'm not willing to take the chance because I don't trust that certain people are stable enough. It's like gambling, you know? It's like you can say, I'm gonna bet $5 that the sun's gonna rise tomorrow morning. You know, I'll bet on that, but I'm not gonna bet on, you know, a horse or something. You know what I mean? It's like you take gambles in life, but some are way more intense than others, and I just couldn't. It just didn't seem like, to me, it was gambling to stay in the band.